impacting. And that's a strategy that we're going to continue to employ as we go through week by week by week and trying to see what the state legislature is going to do about health care, is trying to get our message out there. From an organizational capacity, it's important to be trying to meet with editorial boards, and we've tried to do that in a couple different cities, which is just, talking about your issue in front of the editors of a newspaper. We recently did some press in the Metro East area that was impactful, and there are some legislators in that area who we thought were going to be on the fence, and all of them voted recently for this health care bill. So media, trying to influence the media, does have an impact on the legislators and an impact, an educational tool for the people that are living in the area. So.
Great. I love to hear from our elected officials. I know a goal sometimes is to stay off of the front page of the Sun-Times, but maybe you could say a word or two about the influence that the media has on your work.
Sure. I'll go first on that one. I actually, in my recent campaign, I knew that as I was running, I wouldn't have much input into newspapers like the Sun-Times, the Chicago Tribune, the TV media. So one of the media outlets that I worked quite closely with, or well, I shouldn't say worked with, but utilized, was my local Chicago Journal. It's kind of a smaller local newspaper that really focuses in on some of the neighborhood issues, and they have different papers for each different neighborhood. But one thing that I found there is that the reporters and the editors for those smaller newspapers really put a lot of time and effort into covering the issues at the very local level. I brought up earlier about the Acme Artist Building, and if it weren't for the newspaper, the Chicago Journal, and I'll plug them all night long, a lot of this information wouldn't get out to the neighborhood about what's really happening with development, pushing artists out further out west, or pushing them out of these neighborhoods where they've been an important part of that neighborhood for a long, long time. So I think it's important that you take a look at your local papers, utilize them, write letters to the editor on whatever issue it is. If it's health care, if it's about a building that's being torn down that has housed artists, if it's about a new an art fest going in somewhere, and really reach out and try to work with the local papers, because they're willing to listen to you a lot more than some of the big newspapers that are really run by corporations that don't have as much interest in local issues and issues that I think you're interested in.
Media is terribly important in any advocacy strategy. And let me just tell you a quick story of what happened in 1998. In summer of '98, some of us were advocating in the Chicago City Council for the adoption of the Chicago Living Wage Ordinance, which basically said that any contractor that's doing business with the city should pay their employees a living wage. So if we contracted with a security company or a janitorial company or a landscaping company, their employees would be making a living wage, which in 1998 was, I believe, like $9.40. And that summer, my colleagues, in their infinite wisdom, wanted to give themselves a raise because the election was coming up, and you can only vote a raise in the previous term. You can't vote yourself a raise in this term. So in '98, leading into the '99 elections, they figured they'd do it in the summer so people can forget by February of '99. We, the Living Wage Coalition, immediately got together and talked about how can we use this to help the living wage campaign. And we came up with a very small media buy, a $10,000 radio buy on WBBM radio, where we took out ads, and $10,000 only buys about 3 ads a day for 5 days. And that basically said, how dare this city council give themselves a raise without raising wages for working class men and women who work for the city contractors. We got more press at the press conference announcing the media buy than we did by running the very small number of commercials. And that forced both the mayor and the Chicago City Council to basically negotiate with us to adopt in the June 28th meeting of 1998 both the aldermanic pay raise, which I voted against, but we also adopted the Chicago Living Wage Ordinance, which was a historic ordinance that told contractors that if you're doing business with the city, your employees will be making a living wage. And that was in and of itself a media strategy that had very little to do with the advocacy strategy. So media is terribly important, especially when it comes to healthcare and the arts, because they tell your story. I mean, that's your window to that world, which is, by the way, the call letters of WTTW. That's how they hear about you, okay? Or it could be Winnetka talking to Wilmette, the other call letters for WTTW. But the approach that has to, for any advocacy organization, for any advocacy effort, has to have, your elected approach to electeds, approach to the media, approach to community, approach to philanthropy, because the media has to be a critical part of that campaign.
As a former congressional staffer, I would always emphasize the importance of connecting with staff to individuals who are looking to advance a cause. I'm hoping each panelist could say a word or two about the importance of not just congressional staff, but the staff of elected officials in advancing your message. We'll start with Megan.
I would say it's very important. You have more access to the staffer than you likely will to the legislator, and so definitely anytime you want to try to set up a meeting or recruit a legislator to speak at an event, you're going to be dealing with their staff people. And so you definitely want to maintain a positive professional working relationship and, trying to be educating those staffers just as much as you're educating the legislator, because the staffer has that ear to the legislator's ear is to his staffer. Probably just as much as to the constituent. So I would agree that it's very important.
And Scott, I don't know if you have a staff yet or if you're accepting resumes, but maybe you could say a word or two about staff.
I actually just hired them all yesterday, so
Shucks.
finished up. I had to get them in there as quickly as possible because I found myself trying to answer all these hundreds of emails every day, and 2 o'clock in the morning I'm slowing down on the computer and thinking, oh God, I better hire these staff as quickly as possible. But I actually have a lot of volunteers that have been helping me out, and they're from different parts of the ward, as far up as Roscoe Village and all the way down to Wicker Park, Ukrainian Village. And interestingly enough, before I came over here, we were having a discussion. I hadn't brought up this event that I was going to tonight, or coming to here, and we were talking about art in my new office because we're looking to decorate the office. And the volunteers, a couple who are artists, they said, well, why don't we set up a system where every 3 or 4 months a new school comes in and brings in some type of artwork and you display it, or you have artists display artwork from the ward, which I'm not sure if you do that in some, but just having volunteers like that who are already thinking well beyond what I'm able to accomplish in just the short time frame I've been in has been very helpful. And so in the discussion beforehand, we agreed that we would try something like that to see if it works. So in essence, we have artist volunteers who've already been very influential in my office. Unfortunately, they'll have to remain volunteers, but most of them have full-time artist jobs. So that's.
Yeah, I want to echo what Megan said in terms of the staff. It's very important.